super excited about a big concert that the CPO is performing next week. It's an all-French program. We're going to be playing music of Berlioz, Chausson, Ravel, and Debussy's great orchestral masterpiece, La Mer. What do you guys think about this music?
I love it. La Mer is my favorite piece of orchestral music.
That's a high standard. And what about you, Erin? Is it your favorite piece?
Probably not my favorite, but it's certainly a challenge. It has a lot of different skills that you wouldn't necessarily use on a Brahms symphony or something.
For sure.
And a lot harder to, it's more about like, how do you follow the conductor?
Let me write this down. This is good to know.
So La Mer, form-wise, it's totally through composed, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are melodies that come back at various points in the piece. But it definitely abandons the idea of traditional structure as far as a big symphonic composition goes. And he calls it 3 sketches as opposed to 3 movements or as opposed to a symphonic work.
Yeah, and he was like pretty adamant about it not being a symphony, right? Is that
true? I think so. And I think that he, not just in that piece, but in general, he tried to differentiate the forms of what he was doing as opposed to their predecessors. For example, a lot of his piano works also are written in 3 movements. And they're sort of like sonatas with a first, second, and third, the middle movement being a slow movement, last movement being a short, quick piece. But yeah, he would call them émage or a suite or estampe.
The thing that always strikes me about La Mer is how like every corner takes you to like a totally unique and totally like fully realized mood. When I was listening to La Mer for the first time, getting ready for this, coming back to this piece, I was listening to it, I'm like, oh yeah, this part, I love this part. Oh yeah, this part, this is the best. Oh no, this is the best. Like every time it was a new section, it was just like, oh, I remember this. This was like, it's like a little jewel, every single one.
Yeah. I find a lot of the time people think of French music almost as like this subtle kind of watercolor, a little reserved maybe, which is true to an extent with Debussy maybe in some of his like solo piano works and stuff like that, but I think a lot of French music is very about like that extroverted kind of like sparkle. Like who's more extroverted than Berlioz, for instance?
Boy. This orchestra used to play a lot of Berlioz overtures back in the Bernardi years, I've been told. That was before my time. And Corsair was a real party piece for this band back then.
Really?
So, yeah, we haven't done it in my time here. I've really been looking forward to it. I have an old Montreal Symphony recording of it. It's just electric.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely a good show opener for sure.
So I have a mute that I like to use for French music. Debussy and a lot of French composers write a lot for trumpet with mute. The mute doesn't make the instrument softer. It makes it gives it a very different color. It has a brightness and a sharpness to the sound. But there's a ton of great muted trumpet writing in La Mer, like right at the beginning, Nocturnes with the English horn, this soft, ethereal kind of melody. And it's a fun way to express this music that I don't get to do in a lot of music that isn't French.
There's so much beautiful writing in this piece for trumpet, for horns, for trombones, for the tuba as well, to play at a very, very soft dynamic and to play so lyrically. And what about, he also has 2 cornets playing in this piece.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there are cornets in La Mer. It's funny, we were talking about Corsair. Berlioz was one of the pioneers writing for the cornet, because back in the 1830s or so, that's when valves started being manufactured at a price point and a level of quality that made them practical to use in brass instruments. So before valves were put on the trumpet, valves were put onto a post horn, and that created what we now know as the cornet. So in Berlioz, often the cornet parts are the more melodic, flashy parts, and the trumpet parts tend to be, more like the trumpet parts that you find in earlier music.
It's going to be great for our audience to hear a piece like this, because we don't play French music that often, and most people think that, and are rightfully so, that sort of the center of the classical repertoire is, Beethoven and Brahms and Mozart and all of the famous Germanic composers, and then there's the Russian school as well, composers like Tchaikovsky and Stravinsky, Rachmaninoff. But the French repertoire is not programmed as much, and there are such beautiful moments in this piece with great serenity and with great calmness, But there are also a lot of moments in this piece that are extremely ferocious and kind of disturbing as well. La Mer is very much about the experience of what you as a cognitive person can relate to in observing the ocean. You can see just by looking at the score that he is painting.
But it's also very kinetic in a way almost as well. It's not just like a snapshot of a painting where you're kind of in this soundscape for a certain amount of time.
For
It's
sure.
like Adam was saying earlier, you move so quickly from one thing to another.
Oh yeah.
I guess that's the power of music over.
Yeah. You can
visual art.
feel the motion for sure. He captures how imposing the idea of a body of water that takes up most of our planet is. And sometimes it's ruthless and sometimes it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, the beginning of that third movement.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
We will face the power of the immutable forces of nature. Happy Valentine's Day.